Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over my top 50 prospects in the 2023 NFL draft class. Let's get right into this video. So as you can see here, I have my list of my top 50 prospects, of course, and they're graded, they're ranked, and they have their, of course, prospect grades. Now, if you don't know what these prospect grades are or what they mean, you should go watch the video right before this one on my YouTube channel, Big Regs. Just go there. It is my 2023 NFL Big Board. I explain my grading system, but I'll go over it real quickly just for anybody new. So you have blue chip prospects. This is within the 8 to the 7 range. You have an early first round grade that is a 6.9 to 6.8. You have mid first round grade, which is going to be a good year starter. That's from a 6.7 to 6.6. A late first round grade, this is going to be a year one starter or a year one or a good starter within 1 to 2 years, 6.5 or 6.4. Then you have your early second round. That's going to be a around from a 6.4 to 6.3, but I put them all in 6.35 just for organization. And then a late second round grade, which is 6.3, is going to be an average starter. Early third round grade is going to be an above average backup potential starter. Late third round, 6.1, above average backup. The fourth round is going to be developmental traits. The fifth round is going to be an average backup. Sixth round is going to be backup special teams. Seventh round is going to be a roster spot. And then, of course, we're not going to have any undrafted players in my top 50. So to start off my top 50, I have Jalen Carter, interior defensive lineman from Georgia. Really liked his film. I thought he was easily the best player on the field anytime he was there. He created a ton of havoc, is incredible in the run game, and I think he is the best actual player in the draft class. However, he is going to slip in the draft. He has some character concerns, of course. He was involved in a street race that ended in the death of his teammate, Devin Wilcock, and a trainer. He came into the pro day 9 pounds overweight and was unable to finish it. So there are some knocks on Jalen Carter. However, I still think he is the best player in the draft class. Going then with Will Anderson, edge out of Alabama. I really like Will Anderson. I have since his freshman year at Alabama, and then his sophomore year, I thought he was the biggest Heisman finalist snub. He led the FBS in sacks and pressures and tackles for loss. This year he did have one step down. He had only 10 sacks, 17 and a half tackles for loss, but I know he's got one of the best bull rushes in the class. He is my highest rated edge, and I think he makes a Pro Bowl. I think he reminds me a lot of Khalil Mack with just a little less bend. And then moving on to number 3, really love Bijan Robinson out of Texas. He's been, he's the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. He's a complete back, 3-down back. He has pass catching upside. He's like a pinball of a running back. My video of him on my YouTube just came out. Definitely go watch that. Really like Bijan Robinson a lot. And then Christian Gonzalez, cornerback out of Oregon. He's the perfect mix of speed and size. 6'1", 190 pounds. Ran a 4.38. Had a 9.95 relative athletic score. Really like him and also he's fluid hips. I think he becomes a lockdown cornerback in the NFL. Like Christian Gonzalez a lot. And then Tyree Wilson. Here's where the drop-off comes off. So if you've seen the last video on my YouTube channel where I broke down my 2023 NFL Draft Big Board, I said that it was a 5 out of 10 okay class. And this is kind of what I mean. You've got 3 blue chips. You've got 1 early first round grade, and then the drop-off happens right at around 6 or 7. A lot of these guys I have is a late first round grade. I only have 1 early first round grade, 4 if you include blue chip prospects, which I kind of do, and then only 2 mid rounds. So technically, I'm basically saying that there are only 6 guys that I think are worth the value of a top maybe 15 pick or a top 20 pick in the draft. Even though these guys, of course, will go top 20, I think that these are the not only top 6 prospects, but they're going to be worth whatever pick they are taken with. But Tyree Wilson's a different conversation because he has a potential to go top 5. And I have a mid-first round grade on him. I like him a lot, and due to the fact that he probably is an elite run defender. He's incredibly he has incredible length. He's 6'6", 271 pounds. He's got an 84-inch wingspan, which is only 2 inches smaller than Giannis Antetokounmpo in the NBA, who's a 2-time MVP. And I think he's a mid-round first-round grade for me because he has limited pass rushing upside. He really only uses his bull rush. He's not the fastest off the line, but regardless of all that, I think he is probably going to end up being an elite run stuffer and edge setter in the NFL. So he's my 5th rated prospect in this draft class. And then I really, 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 really like Zay Flowers for this draft class. He's my number 1 rated receiver. And if you can see, he's this far above Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I think I potentially overrated Zay Flowers a little bit. Just because I think he has like some special abilities that none of these other receivers have in the draft class that's going to make him really good in the NFL. What do I mean by that? He's got crazy agility. He's insane after the catch. He reminds me a lot of a Tyler Lockett kind of guy, even an Antonio Brown. He just makes plays happen out of nowhere, and he was heavily limited last year at Boston College because his quarterback play was horrendous, and he thrived in spite of that. With an NFL quarterback, I think Zay Flowers immediately has 1,000 yards if he doesn't get injured off the bat, and I think he actually potentially makes a Pro Bowl as well. But I have to grade him as a mid-first round grade. As a wide receiver, he still has some question marks. Obviously, he's not the biggest. He's probably going to be limited to a slot and a Y role. But putting it into perspective, I would probably have Marvin Harrison over here, so I don't think Zay Flowers is that far off. I would probably have him right around the same category as I did Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson last year. And now moving into my late first round grades, I have quite a few of them because I think that a lot of these guys, which are going to go in the first round, are really worth more of a later first round grade that based on their skill level. Because one of the main deficits, in my opinion, about this draft class is that a lot of players are either undersized or are inexperienced, and that fits for quite a few of these players. But to round off my top 10, I have Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. He's a cornerback that's shot out of a cannon. He is a very willing tackler. He's got a hit stick on him, and he's very, very good in man coverage. Now, the reason why I had him in the late first round grade, I was bouncing between a mid and a late first round grade. However, I ended up deciding with a late first round grade due to the fact that he did play at Illinois. Yes, the Illinois secondary was phenomenal last year. However, he is playing weaker wide receiver competition. He's also not the biggest cornerback at 5'11", 180 pounds. And he also has limited experience with zone coverage, which is ran a lot in the NFL. So if he goes to a primary man scheme like the Detroit Lions, like the Saints, or a team that heavily runs man, this pick could totally work out. But if he goes to the wrong scheme, it could not. Now, I have kind of a similar thing about Joey Porter. I think they're interchangeable. I really like Joey Porter because he has elite length. He's got good athletic ability. He plays in the receiver's hip, and he also flashes lockdown ability at the cornerback position. However, he is going to get beat by faster receivers. But, I mean, he's got the NFL size at 6'2", 200 pounds. He ran a 4.47. He's, of course, got that 82-inch wingspan, which really helps him. And I think he's a top 10 player in the draft class, and I think he also shows or flashes some lockdown ability with that length. And then I have at number 9, Bryce Young. Now, of course, people are going to be like, oh, Bryce Young's going to go number 1 overall. He's a Heisman. Why is he the number 9 overall player? Well, of course, I also made a video on him where I broke down, his film and his everything of why I came to this decision. But Bryce Young is 5'10", 204 pounds. He's going to be the first quarterback who is under 207 pounds to be drafted in the first round. He will be drafted number 1 overall. He's got a great IQ. He's really good at reading blitzes. He makes checks of the line. I think he'll be good at seeing a lot of the things in the NFL, like blitz packages, disguise schemes, zone versus man. But he's 5'10", and what have been the successes of smaller quarterbacks? Great athletic ability or ability outside of the pocket. Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray are the two names that are thrown out there a lot. Kyler Murray is a 4.4 guy. Bryce Young is not. Russell Wilson also scrambles forever and is a broken play mastermind. Bryce Young isn't, but he's close. Bryce Young is more like a Drew Brees type of quarterback where he's going to win due to his accuracy. He's going to get the ball out quick because he needs to, because he doesn't want to get killed. However, I think Bryce Young probably struggles to see the middle of the field due to his stature. And I am a little concerned about his durability because, you know, he's basically 200 pounds. But I really do like Bryce Young. I think he succeeds in the NFL, but I just think his ceiling is somewhat capped. Moving on to O'Cyrus Torrence, really like him out of Florida guard. Probably the best run blocker here. Is also another guy with very good intellect and football IQ. He also has the NFL size at 6'5", 330. And I think he's a bookend guard for a long time. I do like O'Cyrus Torrence. And then Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. I have him as a 6'5", which is he's the quintessential boomer bust prospect. Now, you might be laughing at me right now because I have Anthony Richardson so high on my draft board, but I like Anthony Richardson because I think if you can develop the tools that he has, you could develop a really good quarterback. However, he's going to need a year. He's going to need maybe even 2 years to develop in the NFL level because he struggled in Florida. He had really bad accuracy. Didn't have a great supporting cast, kind of like a Will Levis type of situation there. But he's the greatest quarterback athlete, at least per RAS. He was 1 out of 1,000 of something, 10.0. And he ran a 4.4. He has NFL size at 6'4", 244 pounds, which a lot of players don't necessarily have in this class, NFL size. So if you're a team like the Colts, if you're a team like the Seahawks, and you think and you know you can develop him into a very good quarterback because you have Shane Steichen is the Colts head coach. He was the offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts, and they got in Seattle. You're Pete Carroll. You've made Geno Smith break multiple franchise records. You've made Russell Wilson a Hall of Very Good, not Hall of Fame, Hall of Very Good caliber quarterback. You want to risk that? You can make him into a top 10 quarterback potentially in the NFL. And I also have him really high because I think he has the highest ceiling out of the top 3 quarterbacks, out of Bryce Young, out of Anthony Richardson, and CJ Stroud. I think he has the highest ceiling. Now he definitely has the lowest floor by a lot. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is going to come in at 12. I really like Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I think he comes into the NFL right away as a top slot receiver. He's very crafty with his routes. And his downside, of course, he's a one-year wonder. He played with 2 NFL wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. Somebody had to be open. He also isn't an X-body receiver. I don't think he's going to be able to carry a wide receiver core. If he gets double-teamed, I think he could be negated from an offense. But if he works as a 2, or as a 2, like a second best receiver, or as a Y in the slot, I think he can actually create some very good mismatches. And he's also great after the catch, like Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Moving on to CJ Stroud, I think he has the highest ceiling right now out of any of the quarterbacks in this class. However, I think that ceiling is probably it, because I think he's coming in definitely at his peak. He has elite accuracy. He's got really good arm talent. He can put the ball where he wants it. He had a very good game versus Georgia, but the question marks is he doesn't run at all. He doesn't scramble out of the pocket. He really just kind of stands there. He doesn't want to make second life out of the pocket with runs. He will throw the ball. And he also had an elite supporting cast his entire career. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison, and Emeka Egbuka. He's got Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones. He's surrounded by so much NFL talent that it's like, what is he gonna do when he has a worse supporting cast? But I think CJ Stroud does work out in the NFL. I don't think he becomes a bust like some people maybe project him to do. But I also don't think I would think he gets to more like the top 15 conversation, like the Jared Goff, to where CJ Stroud, I don't think he can put a whole team on his back and carry them to the Super Bowl. But I think he's good enough to make a team consistently go to the playoffs, like a Dak Prescott, like a Jared Goff, have the numbers, have the efficiency. But then when you look a little deeper, I don't think he'll be able to carry a team on his own. Brian Branch is a safety I like a lot in this draft class. I have him as my 14th highest rated player. Now he's a Swiss Army knife. That's why I like him a lot. He can play in the box. He can play in in a traditional safety role, even though I don't think that's necessarily where he fits best. He also played in the slot at Alabama. He's also a tackle machine, only 4 missed tackles in 104 or something solo tackles. Like Brian Branch a lot. However, little red flag that he's not necessarily super athletic. 5.6 RAS, or sorry, it was like a 6 maybe. Ran in the low 4.5s. I wouldn't have him in a traditional free safety role. I don't think he's going to be able to catch up to those really fast receivers. But I think if you put him in the slot, you put him in the box, I think he could be a really sure tackler at the NFL level. And he's my clear number 1 safety in the class as well. Deonte Banks out of Maryland. This is another athletic freak. I think he has the number 1 highest rated RAS, relative athletic score, per the combine numbers. I mean, 42 inch vert. He was second in the broad, or first in the broad, I think. 4.53 guy, second in the 3-cone. Combine warrior. He had a 10.0 RAS score, but at Maryland, he was inconsistent in both zone and man coverage. However, you can develop a guy that's 6'2", or 6'1", I think. 6'1" or 6'2", I'm pretty sure. Over 200 pounds. You can develop a guy like this. I think he could potentially be a top, 20 cornerback or a top 15 quarterback in that conversation. Derek Jones is obviously my highest rated offensive tackle. I think he's very technically sound. Allowed only 1 pressure and 0 sacks at Georgia in his 2-year starting, redshirt sophomore. Athletic and 9.6 RAS score. He also has NFL size at 6'5", 311 pounds. Really like Derek Jones. Another guy I really like is Anton Harrison. He allowed the lowest pressure out of all of the top 4 offensive tackles, that being Derek Jones, Skronsky, and Johnson. He allowed the least. And he also was very efficient in the run game as well, like Anton Harrison a lot. And then Peter Skronsky rounds off my late first round grades. I do view him mainly as a guard, but as an offensive tackle, I could also see him performing pretty well on the right side. I don't think he's the perfect left tackle. He has 4th percentile arms, 8th percentile wingspan, but outside of that, very technically sound. Another guy who's a pretty good athlete as well at the tackle position. Moving on to my 19 through 28, these are my early second round guys. And by this time in the video, I am going to be going a lot quicker because I've just got a lot of players to get through. So Nolan Smith, edge out of Georgia, like him a lot. He has really good bend. He had a phenomenal combine. However, 6'2", 238 pounds, undersized for the position, also was injured all of last year, but great character. Was a captain at Georgia. Really like him. Dalton Kincaid rounds off the top 20. He's the best catching tight end in the draft. He also is very athletic. He's got great size. He's fast, and the NFL is slowly developing into a heavier pass catching league. And what do you want? You want a bookend pass-catching tight end who I really like a lot. However, not the greatest blocker, of course, but had the most production out of any tight ends in this class, rounding off the 20. Paris Johnson Jr., he's a guy with NFL size and skill at Ohio State. However, sometimes he stands up too tall, and, players will get into his frame a lot and could move him out of the way, which is a little leaky sometimes, or can be a little leaky in the NFL if you're going up against the top tier edge rushers with elite bend. He can sometimes get, turned around. But I do think he is worth a first round pick, in my opinion. Lucas Van Ness, lengthy edge rusher out of Iowa. He is another guy with a really good bull. Doesn't have the greatest pass rush move sets, but is a speed to strength type of edge rusher. We're seeing a lot of those in the NFL, headlined by Micah Parsons. Let it like him out of Iowa. Reminds me of reminds me of George Karlaftis in last year's draft, who went 30th overall. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, who I highlighted in one of my prospect breakdown videos. Really like him, the best catching back in the draft, in my opinion. However, is not a 3-down back, 5'9", 199 pounds, doesn't pick up blitzes very well, doesn't offer much as a blocker. However, I think he could be an elite speed back because he is a 4.36 guy with elite acceleration. Darnell Wright, my favorite right tackle, or pure right tackle in this draft class. Really like him a lot. He is one of those stalwarts type of tackles that you see. He if you watch his film against Will Anderson, you'll definitely see why. But, 6'5", 330 pounds. He has good hand placement against the line. However, sometimes with edge rushers with elite bend, he will get passed by. But any other defensive lineman, I think he can hold his own definitely. Really like Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Michael Mayer coming in at 25, 10 out of Notre Dame. This guy's just your safety net type of tight end. He's like a Jason Witten type tight end. He was a primary option at Notre Dame. He was there for 3 years, produced heavily, had a really good year last year. He also adds as a blocker too. Really like Michael Mayer. I do think Quentin Johnson is slightly overrated in the draft process. A lot of people have him as their wide receiver 1. I definitely don't see that. I think he has some definite concerns about, how he's supposed to be an ex-built body receiver. He's supposed to make all these aggressive catches. However, he doesn't really play how his size pertains to. He was listed at 6'4", 215, weighed in the combine at 6'2 and a half, 205 pounds, which is a red flag. He also only was able to grab 7 contested catches, which is a 38% conversion rate. That was lower than Zay Flowers. That was lower than Tank Dell. He also is, a body catcher. He's 6'2", 215. He's supposed to catch up here with his hands. Sometimes would want to catch it with his body. However, if you can develop a guy with that size in the right offensive scheme, I think you could have your prototypical X. He reminds me a lot of like a one step below a Devontae Parker, who was in Miami and now a New England Patriot. Cam Smith I like a lot. He's very athletic. However, he's still raw in coverage, but he's got the NFL size at 6 feet, 190. Cam Smith is a guy that I like a lot out of South Carolina. He's still raw in coverage and technique-wise. However, he has NFL size, 6 foot, 89 pounds. And he also is very athletic, performed pretty good at the combine. Like him, John Mitchell-Schmidt is the best center in the draft class for me. He's a really good run blocker. I think he's extremely consistent in that. However, as a pass blocker, he is leaky sometimes, but he reminds me a lot of like a Ben Jones type of center, to where he's just going to grit and grind it out, and he should be really focused in a run scheme. Starting off with my late second round grades, is going to be through 29 to 42. I have Darnell Washington at 29. I really like him a lot. He offers a ton as a blocker and as a red zone threat. He's 6'7", 250, performed pretty well at the combine as well. And Georgia used him a lot in that dual role scheme. Now, it doesn't have the most production. He wasn't even the tight end 1 on his team, that being Brock Bowers. However, in an NFL system where he's going to get more targets in the red zone and he's going to get more opportunities to block, he could be a 6th potential offensive lineman, which is really good for an NFL team. And then speaking about another humongous player, you got DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. This guy's 6'8", 60 pounds, around that area. He also has he's like an 85 or an 86-inch wingspan, which is around where Giannis Antetokounmpo's wingspan is. However, due to that much size, he is really slow, slightly unathletic, and he also is raw at the position. But I mean, he's another guy that has a lot of tools that you could develop into. And, he's another true right tackle. And I think in the run game, DeJuan Jones could be a mauler. But in the pass game, definitely hope that a team develops him technically wise. Israel Bonaconda is a guy that I like a lot out of Pitt. We ran a 4.33 at the combine, had an elite 10-yard split, had a really, really, really good year at Pittsburgh this year, and I think he projects really well as a speed back in the NFL. Maybe he doesn't have that. Maybe another guy who doesn't have that total 3-down package territory like Bijan Robinson does in this draft class, but like him a lot. Moving on to Jordan Addison at 32. This is a guy that I also think is overrated in the draft process. He is 5'11", 173 pounds. Very light at the position. He's a slot guy. He's not the most athletic. He had around a 6 relative athletic score. He ran a 4.49 at the combine. Didn't have the greatest 10-yard split, but I think but he had a lot of production at college. He played with two NFL quarterbacks, that being Caleb Williams and Kenny Pickett. And, he's going to come in the slot and produce, but I don't think he's an 1,000-yard receiver type or 1,000-yard type receiver. Moving on to Kelee Ringo, I really like him a lot out of Georgia too. A 6'2", 205-pound cornerback who can run a 4.3. However, definitely raw in coverage. In man coverage, he's better than he is in zone. He's kind of really lost in zone. But also not the greatest at route recognition. And when he gets fooled, he definitely gets fooled on film. But if you can develop some of those traits, like he's 6'2", 205, 4.3 guy, and good man cornerback projected to the NFL. If you could develop a guy like that, you could potentially have a pretty good cornerback on your hands. Jalin Hyatt is a guy that I don't necessarily like as much as a lot of other people, and that's why I have him in the late second round graded. Listen, he's not the greatest route runner. He doesn't really run. He doesn't sell routes. Doesn't have great ankle flexion, so he can't really bend hard and cut really hard. He has to take a lot of time to develop a route, which is why he didn't have a really big route tree at Tennessee. But he's going to be an elite deep threat at the next level. He's a 4.3 guy. He's going to be able to take the top off of the defense, but don't rely on him on being a wide receiver 1 for your team. Myles Murphy out of Clemson. This is a guy who, he has elite size, 6'5", 272. He's got a big wingspan. He's a guy he's like Trayvon Walker out of Georgia last year. Now, Myles Murphy is not doesn't have the greatest pass rushing upside. He uses another guy who uses a ton of bull rush, but he is a good run defender. But the one thing that I would like to see him do more is I want him to set the edge better. Sometimes he can be led astray and a hole can open up on film. Would like to see him develop that better and use his wingspan more. He's getting led to the sideline far more than I would like him to as such a big guy. Cody Mauch is another guy who's an offensive tackle guard type out of North Dakota State. Was routinely the best player on the field when you watched him at North Dakota State. However, he's going to have to take a jump to the NFL level. North Dakota State, which is a Division II, to the NFL. And then he's also another guy who has 32-inch arms, which is in like the 3rd percentile, I think he was in. But I think due to his run, or he's like a mauler type of offensive lineman. If that projects to the NFL how I think it will, I think he could be an elite guard potentially at the NFL level, which is why I think he projects best as guard. Tyrique Stevenson is another guy who's got NFL size, who is underrated out of Miami, probably the best player on the field when he played. Another guy who's pretty consistent in zone and coverage, better zone than I think a lot of people think. He's more of a budget type of Christian Gonzalez. He's going to have that NFL size, but I don't think he has lockdown ability that one of the top cornerbacks does. However, I think he is going to be a really solid cornerback 2, and if he has to, cornerback 1 at the next level. Josh Downs out of UNC is, a guy who's a smaller slot receiver. We've got a lot of slot receivers in this draft class, if you couldn't tell. 5'9", like 178-ish pounds, a 4'4" guy, mid 4'4" guy. But he's really crafty on tape. He uses his, smaller stature to his advantage. He's got great, if I can give an example, like Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is a guy who's 5'8", coming out of Ole Miss. However, crazy ankle flexion, who's able to stop on a dime and then flip his hips and his body on like a dig route or on a zig. But he's never going to offer that X type production, and he's not the fastest guy. He won't take tops off of defenses at the next level, but I do like him in the slot, and he's really good in the intermediate range. Drew Sanders was a really interesting player out of Arkansas. I have him as my best linebacker in the class because he's a strong side blitzing type of linebacker. He had 9.5 sacks at Arkansas last year, which was crazy. But I like him in the strong side. We see guys like Micah Parsons who do that double role, but I think Drew Sanders is better in coverage and better in the run game. But he's going to have that flexibility to where he's either going to be off the edge in like a 9 tech or be the strong side guy in, a run set for when an offensive line lines up in that. Clark Phillips is a guy, another slot cornerback who is smaller, 5'9", 182, but is the best pure slot cornerback in the draft. He covers slot receivers pretty well, which is difficult to do as they've gotten so much better. But if you watch the game against USC, he was performing pretty well against Jordan Addison from what I've watched. And then Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave is getting compared to he's the Anthony Richardson of the tight end class. He's just got all these freak tools. He's incredibly fast. He was really good at the senior. He was a Senior Bowl standout, which rose his draft stock a ton. But is still raw. Oregon State guy, not the best blocker either. But but pass catching wise and athletically, he's a pretty good option at the tight end position. Keion White is another interesting player. He's another really big defensive lineman. I have him at edge. He probably plays in an odd front, maybe even gets bumped into a 3-4 interior defensive lineman or a 4-3 defensive end. Big guy, 6'5", 285. He's got powerful hands, and he translates speed to power well. However, he's not going to have elite bend. And I have him at 42, but there are rumors that he potentially could go in the first round. I wouldn't take him in the first round, but I'd definitely be willing to take him in the second if I think he could offer that pass rush and that size to my defensive line. If I'm struggling with maybe run defense, or I've got a bunch of really, really fast and speedy edge rushers, but I can't put them in. I can't put them down in first and second down, but you could do that for Keion White. Calijah Kancey is my first early third round grade. Now, I think Kancey got definitely overrated from the combine. His name was nowhere to be found before the combine in major news outlets and in top 50s. And then, you get to the combine and he runs a 4.8 or a 4.7 as a defensive tackle, which was crazy. But if you watch his film, yes, he did have 8 sacks, but sometimes he did get blown off the line by bigger edge rushers in the run game. I think he's a pure pass rushing defensive lineman. We've seen guys like Jerry Tillery, smaller defensive linemen who have been drafted in the first round, and they've just not worked out at all. They've just not consistent in the run game, and they don't generate enough pressure to have them on the field that much. But Calijah Kancey, he does get some Aaron Donald comps, which I think is ridiculous because he does not have the build or the strength of Aaron Donald. Calijah Kancey is obviously build-wise, weight-wise, frame-wise, an undersized defensive tackle. But if he can generate that speed, I think he performs probably best as a 4-tech or as a 3-eye. If he could do that, then he could probably work out in the NFL. Tank Dell, I have as a 6.2. I think he could potentially be an elite return man. He was a really good punt returner at Houston. He even led the FBS in yards this year. He had 12 touchdowns, over 100 receptions at Houston. But it's also Houston, and his major red flag is his height. I made the joke that he's built like a 9-to-5 worker. He's 5'8", 165 pounds. Hell, I'm 5'10", 165 pounds as well. But if you gave me 4.4 speed, I'd probably be on the football field too. Tank Dell, he is elite athletic ability. He's got really good game speed. Now, he didn't test well. He ran a 4.5, but he definitely plays faster than that. I like him in the slot too. However, it's going to be hard for him to get on the field if he doesn't gain weight. Brian Bresee is really good athletically. Had a good RAS score, performed pretty well at the combine. And he's got some good size at 6'5", around 300 pounds. But production has just never really been there. Tore his ACL, had some injuries last year that kept him out. Had some personal family issues. But as long as he looks healthy, and he was a 5-star recruit, he was the number 1 overall prospect, or number 1 overall high school recruit, I think in 2019 or 2020. If he can translate that to the NFL level, which I have a 3rd round grade on him, but I think he probably goes in the 2nd. I had him sometimes going in the 1st in some of my mock drafts. If he can live up to that hype that he had out of high school and also translate that athletic ability that he has and, use those pass rush sets that are there. It's just he couldn't really use them a lot. He had his ACL tear. If you could translate those, you could probably work out in the NFL, and maybe I could even have him above Kalijah Kancey. Will McDonald is somebody that I actually debated even putting him on the top 50 list. Didn't have so much production at Iowa State, had only 5 sacks. Another smaller guy as well, 6'4", around like 239 at the combine. But this is a guy with really good bend, which I don't think a lot of these guys do. I think at the NFL level, bend really helps situational pass rushers, and that's where I think he mainly goes. I don't think he's a 3-down defensive lineman in total, and that's why I have a 3rd-round grade on him, obviously. But as a pass rusher, if he could translate that bend, I think he could be one of those speed pass rushers who gets at the quarterback. Zach Charbonnet, power back out of UCLA. He also has pass catching upside. I would call him like a budget Chubb. He had a really good year that UCLA had like 1,400 yards, like 5-point-something yards per carry. But he doesn't use his power as much as I would want him to. On film, you'd see him cut to the sideline sometimes, or you would see him, not charge for contact more, which the NFL, with an NFL coach, will hopefully ingrain that in his mind that he should just use his body as much as he possibly can, because that will allow for him to get the most efficient yards possible. But he also has some pass catching upside as well, which is why he made the top 50. Saiki Ika, nose tackle at Baylor. Look, he's a pure nose tackle. He's a pure run defender with some pass rushing upside, with a little bit of pass rushing upside, not to the level of like Saiki Ika, interior defensive lineman out of Baylor, just barely made my top 50. But I think I value his positional value as well as a pure run stuffer. No, he's not athletic. He had like a 3 RAS score. At the combine, he looked pretty sluggish because he's super, super heavy. He's like what, 340? But as a pure nose tackle, what he brings to the table is a run stuffer with some pretty good shedding ability, like him out of Baylor. Isaiah Folsky, another one of these big edge rushers. We got a ton of carbon copies like him, White, Miles Murphy, even Lucas Van Ness. These guys are kind of the same type of edge rusher to where, and even Will McDonald. Will McDonald is very similar to Nolan Smith as well. You got these guys that are similar, but they're one step down. They're a tier down. Isaiah Folsky's a good example of another tier down from a certain player, like Keon White, tier down to Isaiah Folsky. Isaiah Folsky, a lot of pass rushing upside, lengthy edge rusher, around the 6'5", 275, around that area. Decently athletically, but 12.5 sacks. He had more production at Notre Dame. I was flipping between him and Will McDonald for the 46 spot. All right, my bad. I had to make a change at the, of course, end of the video. So all these guys that you just saw, move them down a spot. Jack Campbell is going to start and end the video as my first early 3rd-round grade. Jack Campbell, Combine Warrior, 9.99 RAS, 4'6" guy. Pretty good, pretty built linebacker at 6'5", 249. Pretty good in coverage as well, and he's just a really good run stuffer. However, I think he's still raw out of Iowa. And then lastly, I have my honorable mentions. I did Damiba Adebawari, Will Levis, B.J. Ojulari, Tucker Kraft, and Matthew Bergeron. So that's going to do it for my top 50 prospects in the 2023 NFL Draft video. Let me know your thoughts about this list. Let me know some of your favorite prospects. Let me know what you think about them. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned with me the entire draft season. And I'll see you in the next one.